Thank you for tuning into my lesson today. My name is Mr. Nicoletto, and this lesson revolves around the different ways to classify poetry. Our main objective is to differentiate lyric poems from narrative poems. Two most major ways to classify poems are lyric and narrative. While not all poems will classify as one of these two categories, the vast majority will. Quick and easy way to remember the difference is that lyric poems sound more like a song, while narrative poems will tell a story. A better definition of lyric poems would be a rhythmic flowing, musical sounding poem. It will use repetition and very vivid descriptions. The main way to differentiate lyric poems from narrative is that it does not tell a story. It is just the narrator's feelings and observations. It also aims to inspire emotion in the reader. One big example would be William Wordsworth's I Wandered Lonely as a Cloud. This is one of the more famous examples. And Audre Lorde's Hanging Fire, which we went over as a class a couple weeks ago. Another example would be Edgar Allan Poe's The Bells. I want you to pay close attention while I'm reading this poem and think about what makes it a lyric poem. Hear the sludges with the bells, silver bells, what a world of merriment their melody foretells. How they tinkle, tinkle, tinkle in the icy air of night, while the stars that oversprinkle all the heavens seem to twinkle with a crystalline delight. Now, as you can see, there is repetition in the first two lines, bells, silver bells, and again a couple lines later. And once again, it is just the narrator's feelings and observations. There's no real plot line. There's no characters, no events, no setting. One thing to pay attention to is how the lines are short and they sort of flow into each other. It almost sounds like a rap or someone singing. And this one is a little bit easier to identify, a narrative poetry. It will tell a story, and you just want to look for characters, setting, plot. And usually a dead giveaway is if it has dialogue, then usually it's a narrative poem. A couple examples are Edgar Allan Poe's The Raven, which we will go over in a second, and a poem you may have all heard of, Ernest Lawrence's Casey at the Bat. Okay, here is Edgar Allan Poe's The Raven. Once upon a midnight dreary, while I pondered, weak and weary, over many a quaint and curious volume of forgotten lore, while I nodded, nearly napping, suddenly there came a tapping, as of someone gently rapping at my chamber door. "'Tis some visitor," I muttered, tapping at my chamber door. Only this and nothing more. As you can see, we have characters. There's a narrator and a visitor at the door. There's a setting. He is in his home late at night. And there's events. He hears a knock at the door. And there's also dialogue, him speaking to himself. Another thing to look at is we have longer lines, and it's a slower pace in comparison to this one, which is shorter lines, faster pace, more rhythm, and the lines sort of flow into each other. While this is more just sounds like a person talking, and it takes longer, is less flowing, less rhythm. Now, this is another example. I want you to pay attention as I'm reading it and determine on your own whether it is lyric or narrative. This is The Sea by James Reeves. The sea is a hungry dog. Giant and gray, he rolls on the beach all day. With his clashing teeth and shaggy jaws, hour upon hour he gnaws the rumbling, tumbling stones and bones, 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 bones. The giant sea dog moans, licking his greasy paws. You can pause it if you need a second to think about it. Hopefully you were able to determine that this is a lyric poem. There is no real storyline. This is not to get confused with the personification of the sea. This would not be considered a character. It is just the poet's observations about the sea and him comparing it, personifying it as a hungry dog. You also see some repetition